and I'm also watching Curb. So the final season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. I have mixed feelings on this because I'm a huge fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Larry David, of course, co-creator of Seinfeld, and I've always been a champion. I felt like I was the only fan of Curb Your Enthusiasm when it came out. Like no one was talking about it, and it took a long time for people to even discover it. But it's been on the air now for over 20 years. They're on their 12th season. They take a lot of breaks in between seasons, so it's almost like on average every 2 years they make a season. It's on HBO, but I'm also one of the few people who thinks the show has greatly outstayed its welcome. And I'm one of the very few people who think this, which is, in my opinion, the first two seasons are easily the best of the whole show. And it kind of goes downhill from there. The first two seasons are so good because the plot lines are simple, and it revolves around relatable things. And the key factor here is that in the back of the box, I remember having the DVD, and people seemed, I feel like the same thing that happens with Sonic the Hedgehog, where people don't remember what reality was with Sonic the Hedgehog. I feel the same way with Curb Your Enthusiasm, where I'm like, I don't think people remember what the show was actually about. And so I remember the back of the box of the DVD saying that, and it summarizes the show perfectly. It says Larry David is a walking victim of constant misunderstandings and missed communications. And I think that is a perfect way to describe the show. And the problem with the show is a few things happen. So here's why I think the show went downhill after season 2. So the first two seasons they're both 10 episodes, and it's just each episode is just a day in the life of Larry David playing himself and getting into relatable problems where just through miscommunications or his natural behavior. But you were always on the side of Larry David because you could see where he was coming from. It would be like, oh, he tried to genuinely say something and it just got misinterpreted, and it's a relatable thing that could even happen to you, or at least if it doesn't happen to you, you can at least see why it happened to him. And as the show has gone on, in my opinion, Larry has gone from being a victim to being an instigator. And it's because the show has become too self-aware. Like the whole Larry David character has become pop culture. And now it's gotten to the point where the show is self-aware of the character, and they get too quickly into heated arguments, and it's almost always instigated now by Larry. He's not a victim anymore. He almost seeks out being a jerk, and he seeks out problems, and that's why the show doesn't work anymore, because it's like, well, he's just a jerk now. Whereas before, he could come off like a jerk, but it's not through him instigating it. It's because he's perceived that way through the miscommunication. And so that's one way the show has gone astray. A second way the show's gone astray is the seasonal arcs. So the first two seasons were kind of just episodic, but with season 3, they introduce really strong season arcs where it's like, okay, this season Larry is part of a play. This season Larry is opening a restaurant. And so every episode built off of the previous episode, and there was a seasonal arc, which is kind of fine, but it took away from the really cool, complicated intricacies of the episodic stuff, where it's like, okay, this is just a self-contained episode where something really funny happens, just like Seinfeld, where it all comes together at the end. And I really like that about Seinfeld, and I like that about Curb, but it started getting messy because they had to cater to these really long seasonal things where it just didn't feel as tight anymore, and that lost some genius, creativity, and humor. Another reason the show went astray was because the show got bigger and bigger, and so they got more and more guest stars, and the guest stars are cool to see, but they rarely fit in with the show. I feel like they take away from the show most of the time. They try to steal the show, and it's just never as entertaining as when it's just Larry David living a normal life. When it becomes like a super famous guy, especially when they're not playing themselves and they're just like, I don't know, I just don't like that aspect. It has always felt a little too forced, and it's gotten goofier and goofier and sillier to the point where the show is not doesn't feel like it's based in reality anymore. It feels like an actual show. The first seasons were very documentary-like. The first pilot was actually a legit mock documentary. It was supposed to be a documentary, like a fake documentary, and the show looked like a documentary. And now the show is shot like a TV show. It's shot like a cinematic show. So even the show's flavor has changed over time. It's become an actual show that is cinematically shot with a camera, as opposed to a documentary kind of thing following Larry around. So that whole shift really hurt the show as well. And the editing, everything about it, the editing of the show, I feel like the writing and the editing has shifted to the point where people are like, okay, people just want to see Larry get into an argument. That's what people like. And it's like, no, that's not what people like. That's what you think people like. And so you'll notice that conversations now in the show, one or two sentences into the discussion, it just all of a sudden the person just turns on Larry, or Larry gets really aggressive and it turns into an argument. And it's like, that's not natural. Like the ramp up in the earlier seasons felt natural. It felt like a real conversation that went astray. And now it just feels like the show is trying so hard to quickly get to a fight, to the point where it's like, well, that's not real. Like no one talks like that. No one escalates things that much in real life. And so it really falls flat. And so to get back to my original point, I'm one of the few fans that think the show has really gone downhill like for a really long time, like arguably after season 2, and we're on season 12 now. It was a show, and it is a show I do look forward to watching every week, though. It's going to be, I do look forward to it, but I think it should have ended a long time ago. But even with that said, I'll still be sad. Hey, thanks for listening to this clip of my podcast. I publish new episodes on the last Friday of every month at 12:45 p.m. PST for all premium members of my Patreon. My name is Cooper Bibo. I'm an actor, writer, and producer of film, television, and video games. Head to patreon.com/Cooper Bibo. You can sign up for free, get access to my blog, or you can toss me a few dollars if you want to support me and get special bonuses like this very podcast, or you can subscribe to my YouTube. You'll continue to get free clips and a brand new video every single Wednesday. So whether you like to watch, listen, or read, I've got something for everyone. I've also got a video game called Billy Saves the World. Please check that out on Steam right now. I've got movie projects in the works. I update all of that stuff in Discord all of the time. Again, the basic channels are free to join. Just head to patreon.com/Cooper Bibo to get access. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next clip.